Hello and welcome to Old School Garage. My name is Nicholas and today I'm working on my 1971 Dodge L1000 and I'm going to be working on getting it started. I'm not going to be starting it in this video, but I will be doing the steps that I need to do in order to get there. So there are quite a few things that need to be accomplished on this before I even remotely consider turning it over electronically with the starter and begin troubleshooting all the electronics, if I have good wiring up into the cab, stuff like that. I'm not going to just be hooking up batteries to the starter to try and get it started. I'd like to do it a little bit more legit and start to problem solve issues as I go along. So before I get started with this truck, I'd like to say a special thank you to ProTech Powder Coating for sponsoring my channel. If you need anything powder coated, reach out to Frank. He'll be able to help you out with that. And they do frames, they do railing, if you need railing like for a boat or even for a house, they do stuff like that. They also do ceramic coating for headers and stuff like that. So please reach out to them if you need anything powder coated and they'll be able to work with you on that. Tell them I sent you. But now let's get to working on this guy. Now obviously I have not stripped the cab yet. I haven't done a disassembly video, if you want to call it that, of the headliner, the flooring, so all the carpet, and then all the stuff that needs to be taken apart in the cab. So I'm kind of beginning that right now, but I'm not doing a full clean through like I did on the 68 L1000, which you can click the link here up in the top right corner. But I need to start cutting carpet out because, you know, it's gonna be in my way because I need to get to the pedals and stuff like that. So you can see that it's nasty. So I'm not doing a cleaning, I'm just getting to the things I need to right now. Eventually I will be going through and stripping everything out. I'm just doing it a little bit different from the 68 L1000. So the first thing that I need to accomplish with this truck is really the throttle. So let's go take a look at that. All right, so the first thing, like I just said, we're gonna be working on the throttle. Now you can see here, I've already stripped out this little bit of carpet. I didn't go any farther back. But our issue today is the throttle is stuck. Now it did move just a little bit, but that's only because it is rotted at this bottom edge. So in effort to actually rebuild this truck, I need to get all this stuff out so I can start looking for parts online and figuring out what I need. Maybe I can rebuild this, put in a new plate or something in that bottom piece. But the reason I need this undone is I don't know if it's rested in a position that is actually at the idling position. So as you can see, let's get underneath here. The throttle linkage is right here. Now this has like some sort of like slip shaft, so it's basically just a piece of tubing over top of the main throttle rod, and that's simply so that the cab can tilt forward and not pull the throttle rod completely away, because that would be bad. But it goes down here, goes back to this bracket right here, and then it connects to the fuel pump right here. So I need to get this all freed up and moving so that I can control the throttle of the motor, because the last thing I want is it to be some sort of mini runaway situation where the throttle's stuck in a more open position and then I can't, control the throttle. I gotta shut it down. So I'd like the truck to be able to get up to operating pressures with the oil pressure before I start, giving it any throttle and start to be able to check things, make sure nothing's falling apart. If you look here on this crossover tube, there's no plug or anything in that. I got the truck like this, so that usually only means one thing, that stuff could be getting down inside that. So again, I need to check that before I get into it. So we have lots of little bits of work that we need to get accomplished before we can start it. So let's get moving on that. Now to remove this pedal, I'm not gonna be able to film any of this just because of the placement of everything. And I don't want to make it, some weird video where you can barely see it, you're just looking at the ratchet. But I'm going to be taking 2 bolts out underneath here, and that will, in essence, relieve that pedal. It should pop out. I will have to disconnect the linkages, but we'll get to that when we get there. I'm assuming that this is not going to come out immediately and that these bolts are going to be seized, which will be very fun. But we will see what happens there with that. All right, so I got the throttle linkage out, as you can see. It is very tight. The ends, the ball ends or tie rod ends, whatever you want to call them, are completely frozen. So we're going to need to replace those. And then the seal is completely gone. Looks like it used a old Dodge seal, the same one from the C-Series trucks, possibly, and everything is just corroded. Now this end is intact and is actually moving, so that's a good thing. But it's obviously not good enough to work. So now let's take a look in here. It is very tight. So we need to resolve this before we get anything going here. Just sit here. Oh, it's starting to work free. I'm gonna try and get some oil down in this, and we will see what happens here. I've got the cab tilted forward, and I'm gonna pull the priming plug. I've sprayed all the joints with oil, so everything should be moving easier, but I don't know if that's actually the issue. It might be internally in the pump. So let me try and see here. We got fuel. Looks pretty dry to me. So I've got some diesel fuel. This is not red diesel fuel. It just has Marvel's mystery oil in it. And I'm just gonna fill this up. A little bit much there. Let's see if we got a valve opening in there. It seems to be moving better now. After I've sprayed all the joints, I think it was just the joints. No more crackling sounds. Just gonna keep letting this sit, and then we'll come back to it. Make sure that we have full movement on this, and then if not, we're gonna remove these linkages right here. So, but it feels like they're moving pretty good, so I don't think the linkages are an issue. Maybe can spray that top one, but it looks to be moving pretty good as well. Take these springs off. Yeah, we've got good movement. So we at least know the linkages are not froze up. Doesn't mean the internals are not. It's not, doesn't sound dry anymore. So I'm probably gonna prime the gear pump before I start it. And I may make sure that the fuel shutoff is unfrozen as well. We'll see on that. But we know that this is moving, and that's what's important. So now let's move on to the next steps. All right, so we're here at the crossover tube. Now, this guy, when I got the truck, didn't have a bolt in it or anything like that. Nothing was in here. So more than likely it's fine, but there are mud daubers, or there were mud daubers on this truck. So to be absolutely positive, I'm going to pull this guy off just to make sure that I know that there's nothing down inside of here. There's no nests or anything like that. I don't want to suck up, you know, a Mud-Dauber's nest up into the aftercooler. That would suck. So just as a precaution, I'm going to take this guy off. We're going to look down inside of it, make sure everything is moving correctly, and then, or not moving correctly, but there's nothing in there. And we're going to put it back on, and we'll be good to go after that. Now, we got this guy off. And see, this is what I was scared of. So because that hole was open, those guys were allowed to get in there. So that would have been really bad. Possibly dusted the motor if I would have just started that. So I'm gonna run a camera down inside there and make sure that we don't have any more nests. All right, so let's check the turbo side. There's quite a bit of dust in here. Nothing that I can see right off the rip. Looks like some damage to the aftercooler. That's interesting. All right, nothing on that side. Yeah, we're clear. So just the one nest. It's a very good thing I checked before I started, because that would have been bad. So we're gonna put this guy back on, and we'll move on to the next steps. All right, now that I've torqued these bolts, now I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna make sure that I don't have any other holes anywhere that is important. Am I missing any bolts? Like, does something look weird, out of place? They look good on the back of the engine, so let's check the front. Nothing looks out of place immediately after looking at it. Let's check the other side. Nothing looks out of place here except this guy. Bracket's completely cracked. I don't know about all the way through, but it is cracked for the AC. So I'll probably disconnect this belt just to be safe. I'm sure it's completely fine, but just to be extra about it, I need to check all these fan blades. Are any of them rattling? If any of these are loose, that's very bad. You want to change those out, mainly by changing the whole fan out. Don't swap individual blades, because these can kill you if they come off and you're standing next to it. So, all right, now we're gonna check the oil. A lot more than full. That could mean a few things: that it's just been sitting for 20 years and all the fuel galleries, or I'm sorry, all the oil galleries are drained back. Maybe there's some diesel fuel in it. Maybe there's some water. Doesn't look like either of those were in it, but I think we'll be fine once the fuel or the oil system pressurizes. So at least we know we have enough oil. Now there's two final things that I want to leave you with before I finish my video. The first thing being, I never showed the pedal, of what the pedal looked like. Now a lot of the footage really it wasn't going to come out very well, so I'm not going to include very much of pulling the pedal, but as you can see, the pedal was completely rotted. So I need to replace this or fix it. I don't know yet what I'm gonna do. I could easily turn that on the lathe and just make a new piece. But if there's a replacement readily available, I'm probably gonna end up going with that. I also needed help with it because of where it was placed on the vehicle. That was a two-person job, getting those bolts out. So I'm probably going to end up switching to a riv nut system, or I don't know, I haven't really worked it out in my head yet of how I want to do it so that it could be taken apart by one person and there's less chance of rot building on the floor, because I don't want the aluminum to continue rotting or anything like that, even though a lot of this needs to be pulled apart. Now secondly, it was brought to my attention on the first video that I posted on this truck that this possibly was not a big cam 3 because of the single oil filter. Now, the small cams originally came with a single oil filter, as we can see on this L1000. So, crawl under here. There's your single oil filter right there. In these older systems, the small cam systems, which it was just known as an 855 originally, the original 855s, the small cams, ran on around 60 psi of oil pressure. Now when the Big Cam 1 and Big Cam 2 came out, they went to a newer system where they could have had the 60 psi or they could have had the lower 40 psi. Now, when the Big Cam 3 came out, the Big Cam 3 and Big Cam 4 had a focus on demand flow cooling. So it was just a different way to cool the oil and to distribute the oil, but they went to a dual filter setup. So this is obviously one filter. So that brings me to my manual over here, which this manual was printed in 1981. So this was right before the Big Cam 2 came out in 82. And you can see there is a supplement here talking about the Big Cam 3 and Big Cam 4, that there would be coming full manuals about each motor. And you can see here it's talking a little bit about the aftercooler changes and stuff like that. But we get to this guy, the lubricating system. As you can see here, talking about the Big Cam 3 demand flow cooling, and it's talking about the oil capacity changes in the larger oil pan, bumping it to 9 gallons. And right here, we have our first cooler setup and our second cooler setup. You can see they're identical in how they are designed, except one has the bypass filter mounted on the back side, whereas this one does not. Now, where this is important is when you start looking back at a lot of these older truck, like in their options that they had. So some of them came with a bypass filter on the outside, which is that guy over there. That was made by Lubrifiner. And it was just simple piping of the oiling system to that filter, and it was a higher quality, or not a higher quality filter, but a higher micron or a lower micron count filter, so that it could filter out finer particulates and make the engine oil last longer, because the name of the game is keeping the oil as fresh as possible to get longevity of each oil change. So, and mileage out of it, if you want to say that. So this system is a Big Cam 3 system, still maintaining the 40 psi operating pressure, but because it has an external bypass filter, it doesn't need that extra bypass filter on the back of that. So that was a very interesting find that I only recently found because of this manual talking about this and the changes that Cummins was making at the time. Now, I do believe if you have a Big Cam 4, like this guy right here, they only came with the dual filters. I don't think that they came with a single option, but I could be completely wrong on that. I don't know. There's not a whole lot of information out there on these. It was usually locked away in some guy's head or in one of these manuals like these over here. So the information is not readily available on the internet, or it's not accessible by any means like that. So it's definitely a cool little piece of history. I'm sure there's probably others out there like this. This is an NTC 350. So it literally could have been just because it was a piece of equipment and they didn't deem that it needed a bypass oil filter, or there was one located on the equipment. I also don't know the history of this motor. I don't know if it came out of a loader or anything like that. So it's just a guess at what this could be from. I don't really know. So there's still a lot that I need to do before I get this guy started. There's still things that I need to go through, mainly the electrical system, make sure everything is working correctly. I have all the filters, and I will be changing all the filters off camera. I don't see it necessary to film any of that Unless you guys want to see that, let me know. I will do a video on that. I won't be changing the oil currently. I believe the oil's fine. I didn't see any signs that there was any need to change the oil. Not to mention that that's a lot of oil. But as you can see, or you could see, it was definitely way over the fill mark or the full mark. So I believe there was some draining that went on, which is way more than likely, as this has been sitting for 20 to 25 years. So we've made some progress. I'm still checking this guy. I'm still probably going to end up replacing these guys because they just need to be replaced anyways. You can see they're way too wobbly. They need to be a lot tighter. But I have to hunt down all these little issues here. Things like this, where the high-low range shift lines, they just need to be replaced. There's no point in trying to cut this and splice in a new line. Just replace all that. So I'll be rebuilding a lot of this stuff. So there's still a ton of work that needs to be done. I don't think I'm going to dive into the cooling system. The cooling system appears to be tied in fully, as in it hasn't been touched. So I don't think I need to get into pulling that apart. I don't think there's any water in this. I don't plan on running it long enough to check that. So I'm not going to be replacing all these lines right now. I'm just trying to get the thing running, make sure that I have a good engine. But other than that, the next video will be covering changing the batteries, or putting in new batteries, let me say that, and figuring out the electrical system. See if we can't get the key working, because that would be pretty cool to have it working by the key, not just hooking it up by batteries manually. And we'll dive into the whole system here, trying to make sure our fuel shutoff is working correctly. If not, we'll back the screw out that manually overrides that. But I'm trying to do this as thoroughly as I possibly can. I don't want to just throw batteries on this truck and then say, hey, I hope it runs. Yes, that's cool to say, hey, I just hooked batteries up and it ran after so many years. But as you could see, when I pulled out or pulled the crossover tube off and I found the wasp nest, that's kind of an issue I need to get into or fully address before I start the truck, because I don't need to, tear up a motor because I've wanted to throw a set of batteries on it. I would like to get it running so that I can get it over to closer to my shop so that I can start working on the flooring, because you can see there's lots of rot everywhere that I need to address. Places in here, stuff like that. These rockers, if you want to call them rockers, I'd like to fix that kind of stuff. Get as much done as I can. Now, obviously, this frame rail, or both frame rails, need to be replaced. You can see they're completely jacked and they are split. Both rails are split. They've been welded before. Now, I will be just welding these up for the time being, just to get the thing driving so that I can start to find the bushings for the New Way air ride that is original to the truck, because I want to maintain these rear ends. And my idea here, eventually at some point, whenever I get into reframing this truck, it will not be now until I have some sort of a shop to where I can use my forklift, because I just want to do this the easy way and get it done. But I believe I will be making a cut somewhere right around here, about there, and then making a cut somewhere up in here on the inner rail, just so that I can stagger the cuts and keep everything, working intact, possibly plate it here in the center, somewhere in there. But that way I'm not having to replace those upper rails where they taper off, as that starts to really rack up the price there. So I want to do this smart. I want to do it a good way. I don't want to just, say I want a cutoff put in, even though I have a cutoff, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel after 3 to 5 million miles, somewhere in that range, 3 on this tachograph or tachometer and odometer, that I think it deserves the respect to stay in the truck. I think it would be cool to keep the original rear ends from 1971. So it's stuff like that that I want to preserve. Again, still a ton of work to go. I will be removing some of the interior at some point. But if you've watched this video to this point, I really appreciate it. I know I've been, I haven't been uploading a crazy amount, but been busy with some other stuff and other projects. And we're looking at that guy back there. But I will be doing a tour of some of my machines here soon, so stay tuned for that. I have some history. Thank you to Bill Todd for sending me some mail with some Overdrive magazine stuff and some ads of Dodge L1000 stuff, some cool stuff like that. I'll be showing that on the channel. So we'll be getting this guy running soon. It'll be an awesome day. And thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Have a blessed one.